This is the second episode in a two-part series, and the third and final story in a larger season. This season covers cases in New Mexico. All season, we're supporting the New Mexico nonprofit Angels Voices Silence No More. Please be sure to listen through the end of the episode for more information. This is The Fall Line. Last time, we began the story of the disappearance of Calvin Willie Martinez, whose family last heard from him on May 12, 2019. It was Mother's Day, and Calvin, known as CW to his loved ones, called his mother, Aldina Lopez, to check in. He didn't always have a cell phone at hand. Calvin's sister Becky told us that he tended to lose them, so he'd call from random numbers. But he would always check in with his mother, whom he was living with at the time. That day, he told Aldina that he'd be home later, but the conversation was interrupted, and they lost connection. When she tried to call him back, she couldn't reach him. She discovered that he'd used a payphone at a Love's truck stop in Albuquerque. That's a few hours away from their home near Farmington, New Mexico. At first, the family wasn't worried. Calvin had been in spotty contact for a few years, and he spent a good deal of his time hitchhiking. Becky tells us that he'd sunk into a deep depression and struggled with alcoholism after the tragic death of his wife and youngest child. They were killed in a house fire in 2014. Calvin managed to save their oldest child. He and his brothers tried to fight the fire and get to his wife and youngest son. His brothers even tore a hole in the mobile home siding to reach them. The loss was horrific and immense. Calvin had spent his 20s caring for his young family. He worked in construction, eventually joining the family business. But after the fire, Becky said, he was lost.
Yeah, he was a provider, He went to work every day. He worked with my stepdad. My stepdad and his brothers, they ran a construction company. He always had work. He just had to apply himself and stay sober. That was all we asked of him, but he chose to go the other direction. And he knew we don't drink, alcohol is not a thing that is welcome in my mother and my stepdad's household. Maybe my dad's, but not my mom. But, when you're in substance abuse, you're in substance abuse, and it doesn't just choose anybody, it chooses whoever it wants. And some people are susceptible, some are not.
His surviving son eventually moved in with his grandmother, and Calvin spent more time away from home. Becky said that he'd hitchhike to get where he needed to go. Though his family was always willing to pick him up, it's what Calvin preferred, and how they expected him to arrive home that day in May. But he never did arrive. According to a Source New Mexico article that discussed Calvin's case, Becky told reporters that he is the third person in their immediate family to be murdered or disappear, including, quote, her grandfather and an uncle. Becky was quoted as saying at the time, quote, I'm probably the only one in my family that's going to recognize that's 3 generations in a row. That shouldn't happen. It should not. And that's not all the Martinez family has faced. Last episode, Becky explained the traumatic effects federal boarding school programs had on both sides of her family. The fire, the search for Calvin, and the deaths of several more close relatives since 2019. Their large family, made up of siblings from first and second marriages on both sides, has suffered many kinds of loss. But Becky has still been looking for Calvin. She began back in the spring of 2019, when she and her mother faced their first hurdle, trying to file a missing persons report. Because he went missing in San Juan County, but resided just outside Farmington, and is an enrolled member of the Navajo Nation, the same layers of jurisdictional issues that other families we featured this season, they were immediate. If you'll recall from last episode, Becky and her mother went back and forth between several agencies who told her to file the report with someone else. Farmington Police Department eventually took Calvin's report, although he lived outside city limits and had made last contact from an Albuquerque truck station. Once that report was filed, Becky assumed that the work there, at least, was done. But then something happened that she could not have anticipated. Last time, we told you that Becky had met with representatives from several agencies in the fall of 2023 to discuss Calvin's case and why there had been little investigation up until that point. But the reason for that meeting was not just an update. It tied back into jurisdictional issues, namely the closure of Calvin's case. It had not been with any agency for a number of years. When Becky attended the 2023 Navajo Nation Missing Persons Day in Fort Defiance, Arizona, she asked a Farmington detective for an update in Calvin's case. He looked into it for her, and he found out that his missing persons case had been sent over to Albuquerque Police Department, and thus closed in Farmington. But the case was never actually opened with APD. Once the detective found this out, he called a multi-agency meeting that day at the missing persons event. Here's how the case closure, and then the non-reopening, seems to have occurred. According to the report that we received, Farmington investigated Calvin's case from May of 2019 until January of 2020, and that's when Farmington's initial investigation ends. In January of 2020, the case file was closed on their side. That's because, after speaking with the Albuquerque Police Department, the report states that the FPD detective was told that Calvin's case should have been with APD. That's because he last made contact in Albuquerque. Thus, the case file was sent to the Albuquerque police. But, apparently, that missing persons case was not opened with APD. When that was determined, that multi-agency meeting we mentioned was held at the Fort Defiance event location to find out what had happened and to make sure that information on Calvin was in all the systems. The tape that we played you in the last episode is from that meeting. While checking into the information that Becky gave him, the detective got in touch with APD for assistance into researching Calvin's case. Per the police report, the APD detective who was assisting in the research, quote, stated APD will assist other agencies with missing persons cases. However, the law enforcement agency of where the missing person resides maintains the lead investigation, end quote. After that November 2023 multi-agency meeting, the case went back to Farmington, and it was open again after 3 years. A new detective was in charge of Calvin's case. His information was verified to be in NamUs and in NCIC. But it was a huge concern that for years there was no agency actively investigating his missing persons case. The Farmington Police Department did speak with us for this episode to update us on Calvin's case and to clarify a few questions, so you will hear from them a little later in this episode. There are a few new leads that could be useful beyond the Love's truck stop, and we need to discuss them. First, though, we've got to go back to when Calvin first disappeared. None of Calvin's close friends or family knew why or where he might be, but eventually, Becky was able to ascertain that he'd gone to a gathering in Albuquerque and that he'd left that party after some kind of conflict with one or more people present. She discussed that with law enforcement during her fall 2023 meeting. When they talk about a phone, you'll recall that we told you that Calvin often lost his cell phones. And what's unclear to us is whether the phone in question was actually Calvin's. More on that in a minute.
Yeah, so he was at a party or a home here in Albuquerque, and then he walked to where when he made the call to mom, was at a gas station. And so they followed up with the family here at the party. They knew he left, there was some argument or something happened there, and he just left walking. That's all they knew. So then that's the information they gave us, and then that's...
Is that where they found the phone at? Because we had gotten a phone call from somebody, and then my mom told them that they had found his phone, and then it went dead from there. So I don't know.
Where is that? Do you know where that phone is at?
The person that had it called my mom, and then it never answered again. And see, my mom gave that information to somebody, but maybe, I don't know, it got lost in the way. Well, apparently he had that phone, And they called my mom, and they were trying to give the phone back, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
And I think that's where it went from there. I'm not too sure. The phone to me?
Yeah.
With the party, I guess. Maybe that's how they found the party. Was with the phone.
Okay.
The phone that they
That's the
found.
phone he had with him?
Yeah, I'm guessing, yeah. I have no idea who he knew out there, because the last time I was out there was in 2010, and since then, he has gone back and forth numerous times. His mental capability and his ability to want to stay home and be a father and be a family member, it was no longer there. So he could have been sick and somewhere and, might have passed away. He could have not been able to have alcohol and in the cold and froze. I think of all these different situations. He might have been at that party that you guys are talking about, which I had no idea. And he walked to the truck stop, and maybe he got stolen from the truck stop. I don't know. All these things go through my head, and I'm sure they go through you guys' head too, because you're trying to figure out where the person went.
And I think it was your mom who said that.
Yeah.
We come down here for a family celebration. Then we went out to that house out there, and they said he got in a fight with somebody else, and decided he was going to walk home.
Yeah, he's used to doing that, walking off.
Yeah.
He'll walk off to not have confrontation.
Yeah.
We don't know what that potential conflict might have been about, just that it seems to have occurred before he left for the Love's truck stop, where he called his mother. The phone detail is frustrating because there's so little to go on there. And when we spoke to FPD, they had not received any further information. At that fall 2023 meeting, one of the points of discussion were possible leads. In the next clip, you'll hear multiple agents discussing that with Becky.
Did you receive any information after he was listed as missing that he'd seen anywhere? Or anything that would show that he was alive?
People had said that he had possibly been at the northern edge that week.
Anywhere?
The northern edge?
The casino, right?
Yeah, in Farmington.
Nobody tried to pull video or anything like that?
I don't think so.
The casino they mention is the Northern Edge Navajo Casino, located in Farmington, so close to where Calvin was living at the time of his disappearance. To our knowledge, that tape has not been viewed. It may no longer exist. There's one other important lead, though, that has been picked up again. Calvin had an EBT card, and he used it on the day he disappeared. According to police records, the last transaction that they could trace took place on 5/12/2019, the same day that Calvin went missing. That purchase was linked to a dollar store in Grants, New Mexico, which is about 80 miles west of Albuquerque. And that's the most important piece of information that we have to go on in his case right now. We spoke with 3 members of the Farmington Police Department: Chief of Police Steve Hebe, Detective Davin Bedoni, and Supervisor Sergeant Justin Anaya regarding Calvin's case. Here's what they were able to tell us regarding updates and some clarifications on a few issues. Detective Davin Bedoni, who is the current detective assigned to Calvin's missing persons investigation, took over in January of this year. FPD does not have any of APD's paperwork regarding Calvin's case. Not being able to speak to the detective who received the report from Farmington because he's no longer with the force means that they cannot fill in some of those blanks. And since the case was not actually taken in Albuquerque, that only complicates things further. It's impossible to trace precisely what occurred after the file left her hands. That's why it's been hard to find out more about that phone. If the person who originally called Aldina could be re-interviewed, though, that could potentially be helpful, especially if he knows what became of that phone. There's more solid information on other aspects of the case, including what's been done since FPD has reopened it. Detective Bedoni told us that one new item has been to submit Calvin's photo to a facial recognition program that will help Farmington PD determine if he's been booked anywhere. That way, even if he's using a different name, his photo will still be recognized. The detective also verified that DNA is on file with Nemus, and he's also the detective who was able to sort out the information regarding the precise use of Calvin's EBT card in Grants, New Mexico. Though previous detectives had filed for that information, the output that they received back from the EBT office, it was not clear.
So that purchase that seemed to be at a dollar store, that is the latest purchase you were able to find on that EBT card.
Yes, such information was provided to me by Albuquerque Police. I worked with their missing persons unit, and they have an inside person that's able to look at that information and provide it to us. Previously, Detective Heather Chavez was a missing person detective here about 3 years ago. And she did a search warrant to try to obtain the same records. And it was unreadable. It didn't make any sense to us. So luckily, this Albuquerque police detective that I met at a missing person conference, he rechecked it again and came across this, and it's more readable. You can see a date and time, kind of like your credit card statement or your debit card stuff, where it has a date and time, location. That's what he provided me, and that was something that I shared with the family, that he was most likely in Grants on May 12th. And it was the same time that he called his mom, I believe, from Albuquerque at some party that they had there. That EBT card was deactivated, and I think it was a month later. And I believe I wrote in my report like in August, I believe, August 31st of 2019. So that lead is kind of done, but that was the last transaction. And so May 12th to August 19th, there was no transactions.
And that's something the state would have done.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And that's the hard part is getting cooperation from the state, because that's a state entity. I think I would request that somebody mandate at least that they participate and help us out, because that's a big lead, especially with somebody that's homeless, that doesn't have resources. Yeah. That would probably help us a lot sooner back then, actually, as opposed to now.
So that definitely is a challenge for us in this case, is the multi-jurisdictional nature of it. You know, it's one thing for us, and Detective Bodoni works a bunch of those cases when they're missing persons from Farmington, and we know that their last whereabouts were here. You know, we're on the ground. It's easier for us to do the follow-up faster.
According to Farmington PD, they believe that the purchase in Grants was made after Calvin called his mother from that truck stop in Albuquerque. Chief Hebby gave us a more precise description of where those three locations, Farmington, Albuquerque, and Grants, are in relation to one another.
Farmington's in the northwest corner. We're up near the border of the Navajo Nation and about 45 minutes south of the Colorado border. So we're way in the extreme northwest part of the state. Albuquerque was where he was last seen, which is about 3 hours away from us in sort of a southeasterly fashion. And then Grants is kind of right on I-40, which goes straight across New Mexico, and it's to the west. So that it'd be sort of a triangle, but they're going to be at least 3 hours away from us still on I-40, and they'll be to the west of Albuquerque. So he was in Albuquerque, obviously. His card appears again in Grants at some point later, probably an hour and a half west of Albuquerque.
We know that Calvin regularly hitchhiked, so this both does and does not narrow down his location. We can trace his movements for at least a few hours in terms of people to speak to, like witnesses at the truck stop and at that dollar store in Grants. But after that, the highway in Grants could have taken him just about anywhere. Previously, we mentioned that Calvin's mother received a strange phone call regarding possible activity on Calvin's health services account. That's something that Farmington PD has been trying to look into, but they have run into roadblocks, this time not investigatory, but administrative. They've been able to access his medical records, but HIPAA is creating issues regarding checking into possible insurance activity. Becky and her mother have been left wondering whether it was a scam call or something that could actually be a clue in Calvin's movements. Here's what Chief Hebby had to say.
It's tough because even if it was anything medical related, everybody just goes to the HIPAA thing and it just complicates everything. So, and obtaining and getting records in New Mexico, we have to get a search warrant. We have to prove a crime occurred before we get a search warrant. So I don't know how we got one for the first time for the records, and they gave us a bunch of stuff that didn't make sense. I still trying to figure out how to get the state to comply with us. And I think like anything to do with Medicaid, Medicare, EBT, they should be open to helping us with our missing persons cases. I think that would be the best benefit. We don't have that now. I made a broad request recently to the state, requesting on all my cases that I have open, and I did an input request as well. They kind of declined it, and then they kind of told me to contact them on an individual basis. But it's hard to get a hold of somebody like a point of contact to share information with. So they want like a subpoena, they want other stuff, which just makes it difficult. So I just wish there was more cooperation with interstate agencies. Yeah.
That's some of what I was telling you. Just in general, the complexity of the case is made worse by the multi-jurisdictional nature of it. Those answers are never satisfying to families, or frankly, even to us, because those become bureaucratic issues, right? We don't want to see hamstringing our ability to do investigations. On the other hand, there's reasons that there's warrants and things like that, and that's kind of to hamstring law enforcement, right? They want us to show probable cause before we can get stuff on private citizens. So we're trying to maneuver that, not just in this case, but with all missing person cases. Because like Davin said, underlying it isn't a crime, right? The person hasn't done any criminal event, but from our perspective, we're trying to find them.
We also discussed the possibility of a reward for Calvin's case and any awareness campaigns that could draw attention to bring in tips and leads. For context, we'd been discussing all the different kinds of awareness campaigns that I've seen in various areas, from digital billboards and yard signs to geolocated ads, and the gas station ads that NCMEC runs, like in the case of Raymond Green. Chief Hebby said that they've already been considering digital billboards, but that he'd also meet with his department to consider some of the other campaign ideas that we talked about. As for a possible reward, he had this to say.
It's a little different for us up here. We don't have an active, vibrant Crime Stoppers program right now in the Four Corners area. But it's something that we could look to participate with other agencies. Even sitting here talking, we're kicking around different ideas, and we could do, sort of a digital billboard, which we have here in Farmington. We could come up with something to publicize it greater. I'm not sure Crime Stoppers in our area is the answer, but there will be an answer. Maybe it's Crime Stoppers down in Albuquerque. I'm not quite sure.
So at this point, how can the public, and I mean both in New Mexico and everywhere else, be most helpful in aiding you in Calvin's case, outside of just sharing a flyer? Is there particular information that you were looking for that would be helpful for us to focus on?
I mean, awareness is the biggest one, right? And so obviously, if you know where he is right now, that's the starting spot. But in general, what I think we would like is he was in grants, and when we know that through the card. So anybody that recalls seeing him and had interaction with him, wherever that is, really from that roughly May 2019 period, we would like those people to contact us. So even if you don't know anything ultimately as far as where he is now or what might have happened, just those locations to help us pinpoint movement would give us more data.
Awareness is key in everything. We use that word all the time, on this show and in true crime. But it's not a passive thing. It comes down to paying attention, not just to your surroundings, but to the people who are asking for attention, for their loved ones, and from the people important enough to attract the media, and those powerful enough to make the wheels turn. Becky says that it's been an ongoing struggle for her organizing groups. She's been working with numerous people since 2019, including the state task force, but it can be difficult to consistently get town and city officials with legislative powers to attend events. When they show up, the media does too, and then the faces of families and the missing and murdered make the local and the national news. Every kind of media reaches a different audience: newspapers, podcasts, even TikToks. MMIP stories, they need to be everywhere. But Becky says she doesn't just need these government officials to show up. She needs them to participate, not just to speak, but to listen too.
In the city, when we hold events for the missing and the murdered, you don't see the mayor, you don't see city council members, you don't see them coming out to support us. No. If anything, they're gonna go there for the pictures and they're gonna be gone as soon as the pictures are done. We had to tell them to wait at our event for them to say what they needed to say, because we wanted them to hear what the families had to say before they got to talk. And we flipped it around on them this time. And that was this May 5th. They all talked about it and they said that we need the families to talk first before any officials get to talk, because we want them to hear what we have to say. But that was just one event, you know. I mean, it starts with one. Hopefully there will be more. I'm really wanting to go back to school for Native American law, because we don't even have laws in the Navajo Nation to convict someone who is not Native that has committed a crime towards a Native American on the reservation. You can't try them. They're not going to be held accountable. They will get away with it. I hate to say it, because of jurisdiction and also because of ethnicity. And when I go to these seminars and I go to these, advocating conferences and trainings and stuff like that, it's not so informative. The group of women that I walk with that also have missing and murdered Indigenous family members, DeAndrea Reed, and she's been a huge help. Her sister, Tiffany Reed, has been missing for 20 years. She advocates for her sister and many families as well. But from here locally, it would be Racita Billy, Darlene Gomez, and DeAndrea Reed and Kayla Ignacio are the main people that have really been my support. Even when I'm not out doing rallies and I'm not in the public eye, they call me. They check on me. They ask how I'm feeling. They ask if we've had any leads, what new information there is, if there's any new information. My boyfriend, too, most of all, he goes with me everywhere and he tries to help with a lot of events.
Becky spoke with us about the effects Calvin's disappearance has had on her family, her mother, his children, and herself.
I think it's caused her to be more involved with her grandkids and taking care of his kids and making sure the younger kids don't feel that emptiness, but they still miss their dad. And she really takes care of his kids as much as she can. She doesn't like drugs. She doesn't like alcohol. She never has. But it's like she really hates it now, It took her son away from her. And she's just constantly doing stuff. She'll run herself until she gets sick or she gets so tired. And she's emotionally and mentally and physically drained. I think it just took a toll on the whole family, not just one person, because then it affects everybody. My mom takes care of my grandma too, so during the week she takes care of my grandma, so she's busy. She's constantly busy, and Then she has her grandson. Calvin's oldest son is 16 in November. She will not do anything without him. If it's taking him to soccer, making sure he gets to his soccer practices and soccer games, because that's where his peace is. I think he remembers playing soccer with his dad when he was small, that's why. And I think that's why he remembers it, that's why that's his place where he feels at peace with his dad. He sounds like him. He looks like him. I call him CW. Like, he'll just look at me like I'm not him, Auntie, you know? And I say, I'm sorry, son, you just look like your dad really bad, you know? I call him son because he's my son. He's my baby. They're all my babies. But he looks just like his dad. He talks like his dad. But I haven't had a good night's sleep since he went missing. I always have nightmares of the fire before he went missing. I'll wake up like sometimes in the middle of the night. I'll be like so hot, and it's because like I'm dreaming of that fire and my body gets hot. I don't know how it does it, but I find myself in front of the fire at the trailer when I wake up every single time. And I just have to sit up. And my mom, she has a hard time sleeping too, I know. I think you always play those things in your mind of like what I could have did better. And that just goes on in your mind daily.
At the end of the last episode, we told you about the September 14th, 2024 rally and walk that Becky had planned. By the time you hear this episode, it will have taken place. We asked her how listeners and the larger community can be most helpful in supporting the events that she and her friends plan, which are grassroots and often receive no outside funding from larger organizations.
I think in any situation, if you want to help a family, you should help them directly. If they have, say, if they had a GoFund or a Cash App or a Venmo, I think more ways to help families is directly, not necessarily out to like, yeah, nonprofits are helpful, whatever. But I mean, if you really want to get down to the level of the family, stepping up to the family and, saying maybe we could bring waters, or maybe we could, help with food or something for any event. That's always the route to go, is to go directly to the families.
Becky has spent years searching for her brother. Recently, she's been following the trail of his last purchase at that dollar store in Grants in hopes that she can attract attention that might bring in new leads. That's why she planned the rally for that area of New Mexico. But she said it's been hard too, because her lead also feels like a dead end.
Yeah, I think that's the worst part, because when I was standing at the dollar store and at the gas station in Grants, my thoughts were, okay, he went to the gas station first. He probably got a shot, and then he walked to the dollar store. So I'm thinking, yeah, if I were him and I know him as well as I do, he got alcohol at the gas station first, and then he went to the dollar store. But where did he go from there? And then I look around and there's Walmart, and then there's Taco Bell, and then there's a hotel, and then there's a car wash, and then there's the freeway. I just wanted to sit down right there and cry. Just, like, where did you go? Where are you? But I just had to just keep driving and tell myself, okay, well, we're gonna do this event, and we're gonna try real hard. put the word out there again. And then a few days ago, I went to Gallup.
Becky and her boyfriend had found homes for 2 puppies in Gallup, so they drove there to drop them off.
And then as we were leaving Gallup, we went onto the streets where the homeless were, and we're sitting under the trees and stuff, and we handed out flyers to them, telling them that we were still looking for my brother, and I told them, you guys need to go home. Somebody loves you, and there's people go missing every day, and people get murdered every day. I don't want to see you guys' picture, like, and they like nodding their heads, we know.
Becky hopes that someone would do the same if they saw Calvin out there somewhere. Tell him that his family loves him and that he should go home. We asked her what she wanted people to know most about him. When she mentions a daughter here, Calvin had another child who was only an infant when he disappeared, with a girlfriend that he'd begun seeing years after his wife's passing.
But I think what I would want them to know is that he's a good person. He has a family that loves him. His mother and his sister have been continuously looking for him. His son misses him. His daughter now knows who her dad is and wants her dad home. And also that we are still looking for him, and we are not going to stop looking for him, regardless of the people that come and go out of our lives that say that they will support us and fall off. But most of all, that we're a strong family, and we're going to continue to look for Calvin, and that he was a hardworking man. He loved his kids. He loved his family. And I don't know why he would go missing. The only thing I can think of is that the loss of his family was just too much. And maybe he wanted to just forget about all of us. And maybe he's somewhere on his own. But if you're on your own, CW, we miss you and we want you home. And we love you. And I just want to thank my community and my friends that have been there for me regardless of the ups and downs, because I don't think without them I would have come this far in looking for him, or even be on talking on a podcast. Never in a million years do you think you'll walk city streets filled with drugs, needles, and people laying on the floor looking like they're out of it. But I will walk any street with any person, any drug, and I will look for my brother. I will find him. So he was kind of like my first baby. I changed his Pampers. I made sure he went to sleep. And when I went to sleep, he went to sleep. When my mom wasn't with me, I put him down for naps because my grandma said, take care of your brother, And it was always take care of your brothers. Take care of your brothers. Take care of your brothers. And I did. I did the best that I could. But I didn't know taking care of your brothers meant taking care of your brothers when you're grown up too.
As we told you, by the time you hear this episode, Becky will have held her MMIP awareness rally in Grants. It's not going to be her last. If you follow our social media, you'll be able to keep up with Becky and other families' direct action in New Mexico. Darlene Gomez's work across the state can be followed via updates on her law firm's website, and we've shared Vanjie's Facebook page for Zach in our previous show notes as well. There are regular gatherings, rallies, and calls for action happening in various parts of New Mexico, including events arranged by our friend Eric Carter Lundeen. If you're in the area, please consider joining them for future events. If you aren't, share the information. Or, if you have it to spare, join us in sending funds for supplies like water and posters and gas money so as many people as possible can attend. As Becky said last episode, organizing is hard and help falls off. People naturally come and go. If you can help even once, in whatever way, it will make a difference. Darlene Gomez's nonprofit, MMIWR Indian Country, is another great resource to keep up with how you can help. At the time of his disappearance, Calvin Willie Martinez was 31 years old. He would be 36 today. Calvin is a Native American male. He's about 5'6" and around 200 pounds. He has brown hair, brown eyes, and a number of tattoos, including one on his right arm that reads Martinez Family. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Calvin Willie Martinez, please call the Farmington Police Department tip line at 505-599-1068 or the San Juan County Crime Stoppers at 505-334-8477. We've had more families from New Mexico reach out for coverage, so some of their stories will continue into our next season, along with others that we've been working on: unsolved homicides, missing persons cases, and a 50-year-old cold case that may tie in to one of the most infamous series of crimes in the 20th century. In the meantime, we'll be back in October with our mid-season feature, an interview with friend of the show Madison McGee, who began investigating her own father's murder 4 years ago, and she's still on the case. Thank you for listening. This season, we're supporting Angels Voices Silence No More, a New Mexico nonprofit founded by our friend Eric Carter Londine, the brother of Jacob Londine. According to their mission statement, Angels Voices Silence No More's goal is to, quote, empower families by providing them with the necessary resources and referrals to advocate for their missing or murdered loved ones. We believe in taking a comprehensive approach to support, encompassing a wide range of services, including billboards, DNA testing, private investigations, funeral expenses, therapy, and much more. Our goal is to ensure that no family faces these challenges alone, end quote. You can join us in donating to their mission. And if you can't donate right now, that's okay. Sharing their charitable initiatives would be a huge help. You can find all the relevant links in our show notes. The Fall Line is an independent podcast, and we appreciate listener support. It allows us to do research, obtain FOIA to pay our content advisors, and support and donate to the causes we care about. If you try out the products we advertise, please use our sponsor codes. It really helps. And please take a moment to rate and review our show in your podcast app of choice. My book, Lay Them to Rest, which covers years of my life working on a Jane Doe case in the world of forensic scientists who resolve unidentified persons cases, is out everywhere as hardcover, ebook, and audiobook, read by me. You can order it anywhere you get books and through your local library. Find out more in the link in our show notes. If you'd like to support the show and the stories we cover, join us on Patreon or Apple Premium. 100% of our Patreon and Apple Premium earnings are supporting our Family Therapy Fund and actively paying for therapy for families who've appeared on the show. On Patreon, you can get early release, ad-free versions of our regular episodes for $5 a month. If you prefer Apple Premium, you can subscribe there as well. On Patreon, we also post occasional giveaways, updates, and blogs, which all patrons can enjoy, starting at just $1. The Fall Line is written, hosted, and researched by Laura Norton. Interviews by Brooke Hargrove. Produced, engineered, and scored by Maura Curry. Content advisement by Vic Kennedy. And, as always, our most special thanks to Liz Lipka.